You've been listening to President Trump's bilateral meeting with our NATO ally, Turkey, Erdogan there. They have a great friendship. President Trump, with a few news items, he said on the potential indictment of Jim Comey, "I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know." On the issue of Turkey, we know that Turkey was let go from the F-35 program after they purchased a missile defense system from Russia. And President Trump said on reallowing Turkey back into that program, quote, "We believe Erdogan will be successful with buying the things he wants to buy," but he emphasized the meeting had yet to take place. And then finally, the third news item, there was a meeting between 8 Middle Eastern leaders and President Trump. And on the prospect of a deal in Gaza that would end the war in Israel, President Trump said, "The meeting went great. We are close to getting some kind of deal done." So some big news items there. We'll break it all down here on Outnumbered. I'm Kaylee McEnany. Here is my co-host, Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Ainsley Earhart, co-host of Fox & Friends, Rosanna Scotto, Fox 5 New York anchor, and Paul Morrow, retired NYPD inspector and Fox News contributor. Paul, we began today with some reporting out from Politico on this deal, potentially, on Gaza. President Trump laid it out for the 8 Middle Eastern countries. There were 21 points to the deal. Tony Blair apparently crafted this deal, former British Prime Minister, along with Jared Kushner. There was a meeting in the White House. The deal, according to Axios, would be a gradual Israeli withdrawal from Gaza once a ceasefire has been agreed to and all hostages released, and Hamas would no longer control Gaza. It would be a big deal to get Turkey on board with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Turkey has a lot of influence in that region. They're a very large country. They sit at the crossroads of East and West. That's why Istanbul has always been central to world history. It's been called 3-4 different things down throughout history. So Erdogan is undeniably a player in this, and that's part of the subtext of this meeting. To expand a little bit, at UNGA, the UN General Assembly, there are all kinds of bilats, as they call them. A lot of them you see, a lot of them you don't. I worked this event very closely for a lot of years. There are things that happen as sort of subtle as people knocking on each other's hotel doors in the middle of the night, and then they go off to have meetings. And these are world leaders. What strikes me about this meeting and about the stuff that you're talking about is how sidelined Europe really is. I know Tony Blair is involved, but the big reporting coming out of UNGA has not involved. The biggest story was that Macron got stuck in traffic. And realistically, it shows you that the big shift that's going on right now, from where I sit, the defender, the advocate for world peace, and the defender of traditional Western values, however you want to categorize those, right now, is Donald Trump alone. You got Meloni a little bit in Italy, but other than that, the most I see coming out of this relative to Europe is that they're meeting with Newsom regarding climate change. They've really been marginalized, and I think it's that large. I really do think at this point, we're at a real inflection point relative to the purpose and the direction of the Western world.
Emily, I think Paul makes a fantastic point. That is so well said. In fact, there is a Politico article. It's a former Biden State Department official who dealt with the region, the Middle East region. Here's what he said about his tenure. "We did not act like a superpower," is what he said. "Instead of beginning from the proposition that these were problems we could solve, we persuaded ourselves that there was little we could do to move our regional ally, Israel." And you compare that to President Trump ending wars, solving peace potentially in the Middle East if he's able to get a deal. It is a cataclysmic shift in our place in the world.
And it's sort of telling. I actually saw on the street yesterday these two gentlemen. They were both wearing hats that said, "Make Europe great again." And so if there is such a sort of disdain that we've seen or a rejection by leaders, which President Trump pointed out during his address when he said, "Not one person, not one of you called me when I was out there standing allied with Israel during the invasion and afterward and trying to broker this deal. None of you. All of you do is issue letters." And the point is that I think the people of Europe feel very differently. I think today what we saw, too, was Turkey, interestingly, trying to sort of inject itself as some type of diplomatic broker, not only with Gaza and Ukraine, but also Syria, to your point about its geographic importance and sort of the middle child, if you will, right? They're sort of trying to broker peace. But that might sort of land a little tepidly when you contrast that with the amount that they still support Russia. They purchased the same amount of crude oil from Russia as all of NATO combined. And when you talk about the unrefined products, and they purchased the majority, they purchased like over 26%. So I think it's a little bit hard to take any type of verbal positions they have if they're not backing it up with actually saying, all right, we're gonna slay the dragon's head right now and cut off the funding that Russia has been enjoying from Erdogan from so long.
You know, Ainsley, there's still a long way to go. Erdogan told Bret Baier this week, "I don't see Hamas as a terrorist organization. On the contrary, I see it as a resistance group." That's pretty far off from the position of President Donald Trump.
They tried to walk that back, too. I couldn't believe he said that. Obviously, that's not how most Americans feel. It's not how my Jewish friends feel. They witnessed October 7th. We all did. It was similar to how America felt with 9/11. We can't get complacent here. And these Democratic, their culture is changing the makeup of our country. People are recognizing it, and that's why Republican candidates are being elected. That's why we're seeing this happen in Europe, where you see posters for Charlie Kirk. You see more than 100,000 people on the streets of Europe. It is a movement that is spreading around the world. We see what socialism, we see what supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization, does. And we're tired of it. Look what's happening in New Jersey. There's an Emerson poll that just came out where the gubernatorial race there in New Jersey, it's tied 43-43. That's in New Jersey. That is a deep blue state. Yes, a few Republican governors have won in the past, but it's been a while since that has happened. The fact that New Jersey is possibly turning red, that is a phenomenon. And that's what we're seeing around the country. They're resisting these Democratic notions, and the culture has changed in our country.
Yeah, and I think that matters, Rosanna. I think having domestic wins like what President Trump has had, having international wins like the bombing of Fordo, and then having friendships. He has a personal camaraderie. He said, I've met with Erdogan during my time, and I think he called it exile, down at Mar-a-Lago, those 4 years when Biden was president. Keeping these relationships matters.
I think President Trump wants nothing more than to broker peace around the world. Whenever he gets up there to speak, he talked about it at his UN speech. I brokered 7 peace deals. I mean, nothing would make him happier, I think, to broker what's happening with Israel and Hamas and Gaza, and of course, Ukraine and Russia. Let's not forget that. Today, when he was talking with Erdogan, he told Turkey, stop buying Russian oil. He said he was very disappointed with Vladimir Putin. He wants to put pressure on Putin to settle what's happening in that part of the world. Listen, he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. It's within reach.
I know, and I think they announced that. I believe it's October 10th. I haven't marked on my calendar because he has deserved this for a long time. So we'll see if President Trump gets that Nobel Peace Prize.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox News Patriot today. Click join to find out how.